Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 3, Episode 26, The Adversary. This episode aired June 19th, 1995. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about the previous episode, which was Facets?
No, it was perfect.
Yeah, I thought that one was pretty good. We had to talk ourselves into the thumbs up, but it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, and I managed to avoid my section entirely being ranting about what an awful person Curzon was. That was a win.
Yeah, we didn't need any more ranting about Curzon. We've done quite a bit of that already. I mean, come on. It's nothing less than he deserves.
Agreed.
Okay, you ready for this one?
I think so.
So in the cold open, they trick us a bit when Sisko says it's his last commander's log. But the reason it's his last commander's log is because he's getting promoted to captain. So everyone is gathered to clap as Jake pins his new pip onto his dress uniform. And Jake hugs him, and Kira hugs him, and Sisko is beaming. It's adorable.
He looks very slick in the formal uniform.
I always think that the dress uniforms in this version of Star Trek are very costumey. They're always a little bit silly looking.
Oh, interesting.
But nobody else is wearing them.
I like it. He looks the part.
Well, he looks very happy.
Yes.
Everyone congratulates him, and Odo says that he doesn't understand the humanoid obsession with rank and title, but he says if anyone deserves a promotion, it's Sisko. This is rich coming from Odo, who is constantly threatened by people turning up on the station with security titles.
Yes, this was funny. Odo is someone who's very cognizant of his position in the hierarchy.
Yeah, I really laughed at that. It's like, okay, dude. Although I do like it when Snodgrass tells him that he is obsessed with ranking and title.
Yes.
Anyway, they all drink a toast to Sisko, and Miles calls him the newest and best captain in Starfleet. Easy there, Miles.
Yes.
And then an ambassador who has a familiar face pulls Sisko aside to tell him why he's come. He's here because there are intelligence reports of a coup on the Zenkethi homeworld, and he says the Federation needs to show a willingness to protect the colonies on their shared border. So the Defiant is going on patrol in a couple of days, and the ambassador will be going along. And then they sing For He's a Jolly Good Fellow, which is a tradition I have never understood in my entire life.
Well, and they had to give him the 3 cheers as well.
Yeah.
It is funny, though, that Sisko is worried about Jake drinking some of the champagne.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have a problem with Jake dating significantly older women.
Yeah. That seemed a little bit silly. He only let him have one little sip of champagne. Now, it seems really funny to me that Sisko wouldn't have double-checked on these orders with Starfleet. I mean, this guy's an ambassador. He's not even an evil admiral. So he doesn't even check.
Oddly enough, that is actually my first over-analysis point.
By the way, this ambassador is played by Lawrence Pressman, who he also played Gamor in Second Skin.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, so this is the second guy he's played in this season.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Looks very different without the Cardassian makeup on.
You'd think Kira would have recognized him.
Yeah, you would think Kira would have recognized him. Well, now we go to the Defiant, and Sisko is giving some orders to Miles about shoring up the ship's defenses.
So Sisko's been captain for about 4 minutes and is already bossing Miles around even more.
Oh, yeah. That's what I thought, too. He seemed very captain-y, very bossy. Well, when Sisko leaves and Miles gets to work, he hears some thudding noises behind him, but he doesn't investigate. He just kind of looks around. The music plays dramatically as if to tell us that something happened, but Miles just goes back to work. And we cue the theme song.
Now, if you watch the screen to the right behind Miles, you actually see there is a shadow on the wall that comes and goes.
Oh, I did not see that. And I watched it twice. Of course, when you're taking notes, you don't always see things on the screen. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you see there was something there.
Miles missed it too.
Exactly. But this is where I have a slight problem. For an engineer like Miles, hearing some kind of banging noise or clunking or thudding, that should set off a lot of red flags.
Absolutely.
It could be somebody who shouldn't be there, or it could be some kind of fault that would lead to a bigger problem. Like the favorite in all of Star Trek, a plasma conduit explodes when they go to warp, killing everyone.
I mean, he should have at least gone to look, and then they could have found a tool on the floor or something, and then he could have just been like, oh, I guess Sisko dropped it. But instead, he doesn't do anything. Although later, when he hears noises, he does go and investigate. Right. So it could have just been a time thing.
But I don't think, as an engineer, you would be that cavalier. Because if you start hearing a noise or noises, that could be an indication there's a bigger problem and that something needs investigating.
I totally agree. Well, after the theme song, Dax and Sisko are in the elevator, and Dax is grilling him about Cassidy Yates. Sisko says she is a little opinionated, but has a nice sense of humor. And when she returns to the station in a month, he's going to take her to the holosuite to watch the 7th game of the 1964 World Series together. So Dax is like, oh, you really do like her. And this makes her very happy because she's very nosy.
The question is, what happens if she's on the opposing team?
Well, that's still okay, I think.
Oh.
I guess it depends. I mean, there are some fandoms in baseball that really hate each other's teams.
Yeah.
Like the Yankees and the Red Sox, for example. Overall, like, I can go and watch things with people who root for the other teams. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. But yeah, there are some manic fans.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when they arrive at the bridge, they hear that all systems are ready, so they take off for the Zenkethi border.
When the ship is ready, Dax says, aye, aye, Captain. Shouldn't that only be one eye because they're not pirates?
We're not pirates. Yeah. I think they were just trying to find a way for her to say captain, which is silly because we've already covered that anybody running the ship is the captain, whether they have the rank or not. So now we go to Miles in a Jeffries tube, and he's working on an open panel. He hears some thumping sounds again, and the dramatic music plays again. He calls out, but no one answers, so he crawls towards the noise, where he eventually bumps into Julian, who claims that he was connecting his new diagnostic console to the medical bay's power grid. He says he was putting his engineering extension courses to work, which is something he said before.
Yes.
Miles is a little suspicious, so he checks Julian's work and says, not bad for an extension course.
Did you have any suspicions at this point?
I definitely had suspicions because I thought it was strange that he would just appear.
Yeah.
And I also don't really think that Julian or anyone is going to be crawling into the tubes without telling Miles.
Yeah.
Because Miles is in charge, right?
Right. He's the engineering chief. You'd at least ask his permission as probably just standard protocol.
Well, even just for a warning. But I, of course, have a thing about making changes in production, which is what Julian is doing.
Yeah, don't we both?
Shouldn't be changing stuff in production. We're live. We're flying. Yeah. What are you going to break while we're flying through space? So, yes, I did have suspicions at this point. But when he checked the panel and said, oh, it looks okay, then I thought, okay, that was just a red herring.
Yeah. Also, Miles is an engineer, so wouldn't he also want to know what this gear does just out of curiosity?
Might have asked.
Yeah, so would have asked Julian questions about it later.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But also, I believe Miles is very busy. Maybe this isn't time to socialize, especially since he made all these upgrades supposedly to the defenses.
Yeah.
And then this problem that they have occurs really quickly, so there maybe was no time for discussions. But I agree with you. So Sisko calls Snodgrass for a chat in the mess hall. He just wants to make sure Snodgrass will protect the ambassador and get him off the bridge if something goes wrong. Before Snodgrass leaves, he congratulates Sisko again on his promotion, but Sisko doesn't think it really changes much. Snodgrass doesn't agree. He points out that people don't join Starfleet to become commanders. It's the captain's chair that everyone has their eye on. He says that was his plan when he joined, but people don't get to be captain wearing a gold uniform, which is an interesting comment considering Captain James T. Kirk.
Well, there is that. I got a real sense that there's a hint at dissatisfaction with Starfleet and his position here.
Yeah, there's definitely something going on here, no question, because otherwise I'm not sure you need this conversation.
Right.
Well, Sisko says that Snodgrass can always transfer to command, and just like for a second, he looks kind of intrigued, like, oh yeah. But then he says with a smile, but then who will protect the ambassador? And then they kind of laugh like that's a joke. I wrote down when I took my notes that I assume this is going to mean something in the future because it really didn't mean anything now, but somehow it was very interesting.
Yeah.
The Snodgrass character, he's actually kind of compelling. I don't know if it's his voice or the way he delivers it or what, but I find him interesting now.
Yeah, he definitely has good screen presence.
Yeah, but gosh, if you want to be in command, just go to command. I also think, though, there's something slightly interesting here about Sisko. I've been in this position where you get promoted and you just feel the same. But everybody starts treating you differently, and it's very weird. But you're still the same person you were the day before. I just kind of relate it to him saying this doesn't really change anything, and the other guy being like, oh, what are you talking about? Changes everything. Yeah, not really.
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy who is still the emissary. The prophets have spoken to him directly. And he's like, I just got captain.
Yeah, what's a pip mean?
I would see the first part as a bigger deal than getting promoted, but...
Yeah, agreed. Well, they're 12 hours from the border, and Sisko says he hasn't been here since the last Zenkethi Federation War. I wrote down, when was this? Is this a little retcon? I don't remember hearing about this before.
So Sisko must have been involved in that.
Yeah, that was the implication.
I feel there's a good backstory missing here.
True.
There's probably a novel written about it, I bet.
Oh gosh, I bet there is. Odo plays a Priority 1 audio distress signal from Barissa Prime, where a guy is saying that they're under attack from Zenkethi warships, and then they lose the signal, and there's a dramatic ad break.
Right after Odo says, "They're gone."
Yeah. Well, then when they come back from the ad break, Sisko says that they've been unable to establish contact with the planet, so he assumes that they're at war. Very dramatic.
Isn't that a little bit of a jump there?
Yeah, from one attack to war.
Yeah. How do we know the guy who wasn't running communications hadn't charged his cell phone? So...
But regardless of that, of them losing contact, they were being attacked, supposedly, by warships. So that does imply that they're attacking into Federation space.
But they're lacking a lot of evidence. Maybe the scan data from the Zenkethi ships showing that they were the ones attacking?
Yeah, so much information is missing.
I just think it seems a bit of a jump with very little evidence. But I guess Sisko could be acting cautiously, saying he's assuming they're at war, but he's not taking directly aggressive action.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It just seems like you'd want some confirmation on any of this. But I guess technically they're on their way to see for themselves. He doesn't know anything else at this point. So Sisko tells Odo to contact Starfleet Command and let them know what's happening. He also tells Dax to try to contact the nearest starship, but then we find out that there is a power fluctuation in the communication system that is stopping them from being able to communicate out. So Sisko tells Miles to fix it, and Miles asks Dax to help. So after they leave, Sisko gives Kira the helm.
Kira immediately then starts shooting things.
I thought you were going to say how excited you were to see Kira take the helm, because that actually was very dramatic.
Kira does everything dramatically.
That's true, because she's always got that perfect posture. She always looks very serious.
She's got awesome hair.
Even when she just has like a little tiny part of the scene, she takes it very seriously.
She's another person who knows how to work her on-screen presence.
Yeah. Now we are back in the Jeffries tubes, and Miles pulls off a panel, and they see a bunch of tubes going everywhere. Tubes that seem to be alive as they're connecting themselves without anyone there to connect them.
That was quite a cool effect. I thought that looked awesome.
Yeah. Dax says it's spreading through the system like some kind of parasite. When Miles tries to remove it, he finds that it's protected by a force field. Miles puts the panel back on and says they need to check the other command systems because he has a bad feeling about this. You should have a bad feeling about this. This is scary and weird.
Yes, there are digital snakes in the control panels.
Yeah.
That's what I thought they looked like.
Yeah, because they looked alive.
Almost serpentine, the way they were moving around and just attaching to things. Great effect.
So Miles is showing the moving tubes to Sisko now, and apparently they've connected themselves to the command and communication relays, the internal sensors, the transporter, the deflector shield, almost every critical system. And we can't figure out how to get past the force fields. Sisko wonders how they got on board. Miles says he did a systems check before they departed, so he's pretty sure these things were put in place after the departure, which means someone aboard the ship is a saboteur. And we learn here that there are 47 people on board, and it could be any one of them because we have no security protocols.
Correct.
I added that.
They could just put code panels on all the access to the Jeffries tubes.
They could. Miles kind of looks at the floor, and Sisko asks him what's wrong. And at first he doesn't respond, but eventually he says that he saw Julian crawling around one of the Jeffries tubes the other day. And Dax says she has an idea.
It also seems odd that the chief wouldn't have told Dax and Sisko about the noises he heard in engineering.
Yeah.
And not immediately tell them about how Julian was in the conduits.
Yeah, you'd think he would have said that, like, gee, I thought I heard something. Of course, then they would have been like, and you didn't go and investigate?
Oh, so Miles, like a good engineer, is also covering his butt.
Covering his butt, exactly.
Good one.
Now we're on the bridge, and Sisko has gathered the main crew and is telling them that he trusts them all with his life, but someone on the ship is guilty of sabotage.
I think at this point, everybody should, back up, all stare at Eddington and say, again?
Oh, that's true. He did sabotage the Defiant.
Yes.
Which episode was that?
Dyer's Cast.
Yes, the second part of the Garrick two-parter. Well, Dax says one of the devices was planted in the warp plasma conduit, which means that whoever did it would have been exposed to trace amounts of tetrion particles. So they're going to scan everyone for the particles. Dax and Miles have been exposed, so if no one else is guilty, it's one of them.
Very dramatic.
Sisko volunteers to go first and passes the scan. Kira, of course, volunteers to go second, and she is also clean.
This is all very Agatha Christie mystery movie.
Yes, it is.
Oh, this could be an episode of the Odo Mysteries.
Oh, yeah. The Odo Garrick Mysteries?
Yep.
I thought it was funny that they didn't seem terribly prepared. Like, no one was standing there with a weapon drawn or anything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, when Dax scans Julian, they do show Snodgrass at this point kind of reaching for his weapon.
Yeah.
But Julian passes the scan. And then Julian wonders why Miles seems so relieved. And Miles says it's because he saw him in the conduits the other day. And Julian is like, I wasn't in the conduit.
I like how they did that.
Yeah.
Because they're focusing on Dax, who's going on to scan the next person.
Yep.
And Miles and Julian start this conversation basically off screen, so you only hear them talking. It was a good way of starting the dramatic climax of this scene.
Yep. No, I totally agree. So then Dax scans the ambassador, and it of course comes up as positive. But before anybody can do anything, the ambassador shapeshifts into a big blob, knocking everyone close over, and then disappears up into the ceiling. And Sisko hits his fist on the chair in frustration. Odo looks completely shocked when this happens.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he really needs to figure out how to identify his relatives when he's standing right next to him.
Yes. That would be a very useful trick.
Plus, it's happened now so many times. I mean, come on.
The end of this scene proves something you've been saying before. Odo is extremely powerful and could be very dangerous. This clearly shows that a changeling in control of their powers and how fast they can move and quickly they can react. You had a room full of people, including armed Starfleet officers. He knocks Kira down, the other guy, and is into the vent before anybody can react.
Yes, he's extremely dangerous. I've been saying that for months at this point.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't think they have an appreciation for just how effective a changeling could be.
Right.
I guess because they haven't really had any experience with them.
No, they only have Odo. And the only time he was scary was in that episode that had his fake dad in it.
Right. That should at least give you a hint of what's possible.
True.
Also, couldn't they get Odo to talk to it? Couldn't they send Odo after it right now and say, go and have a chat with it? Because...
yeah.
No changeling has ever harmed another. That's been repeated like twice now.
Yeah.
So he could at least safely have a chat with the changeling.
I thought it was strange that he didn't chase after him.
Yeah.
He just stood there.
Maybe it was just surprise of he literally had no inkling that there was another changeling on board.
Well, they never do. After the ad break, we're back on the bridge and the cloak is engaged and everything goes dark. And of course, we realize that now we have no control over the ship, and that includes all the weapons.
Dax says the ship is no longer under their control.
Yep.
This is so Star Trek.
So Star Trek.
How many times has this happened across Star Trek series?
Yeah, well, first of all, they make it too easy for people to take over the ships, but...
That's because they don't have any keypads on the Jeffries tubes.
But it's also just part of a good dramatic story.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the absolute staples of Star Trek.
Well, I always like it when they make their environment part of the story. So they've now made the ship a character. Oh. So I always like that. Anytime they did it on Next Gen, I like that too.
Oh, very much so.
Well, Snodgrass and Odo have checked every inch of the ship and cargo and haven't been able to find the changeling. They wonder if he managed to get off the ship somehow, but Odo says he won't leave the ship until he's completed his mission. Sisko assumes the Dominion is trying to start a war between the Federation and the Zenkethi. They now start wondering if any of the things that have happened really happened, or if the entire mission is all a big fake.
Yeah.
They're not even sure if the real ambassador was ever there, which you should have been asking these questions way back when we were still on the station.
Yes.
Sisko says if they can't figure out how to stop their own ship, they might end up causing a war instead of preventing one. And Odo is sure his people are trying to destabilize the Alpha Quadrant, making it much easier for the Dominion to move in.
Well, I think that sounds about right.
Yep.
Well, they already told Odo that removing the Tal Shiar and the Obsidian Order were getting rid of two organizations which could threaten them.
Yep.
We have history of this.
Yeah, but we just don't do anything. We wait to see if something bad happens.
I guess they're treating them like the Cardassians.
Well, I think they are, but also I think it's a result of the episodic nature of the show. Yeah. I think it would have been quite different if it were serialized. We would have been much more focused on this from week to week.
Right.
Sort of how shows were then.
Yeah, no spoilers, but I think the show does head more in that direction in the later series. Right. Of making it a series about a story arc rather than purely episodic.
Right.
I think you know that already, though.
I do. I think you've said that before. Well, even with sensors working, they wonder how they could scan to find the changeling. Odo points out that if he turns into a rock, he actually scans as a rock. Do you remember in the episode of The Siege where the Bajorans were trying to break into and take over Deep Space Nine and they were scanning for organic material? That was how they were going to find Odo.
Ooh.
I wonder if they forgot about that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Or maybe that was never going to work. I don't know.
Perhaps at that point in time, Odo hadn't practiced enough to be really good at shapeshifting.
You're right. Or he scanned as organic when he was in his humanoid shape.
Yeah, I wonder.
Which doesn't make any sense, but okay. But he says if he's a rock, he scans as a rock, so maybe.
I think he's learned to do that in the time between the episodes.
Okay. Well, because the changeling could be anyone or anything, Sisko orders all non-essential personnel sealed into their quarters with force fields. He wants Julian to figure out how to scan for the changeling. He also orders everyone to stay with a partner at all times, which, by the way, nobody does.
That was more of a suggestion.
Yeah. They have 7 hours before they enter Zenkethi space. Well, now we show Odo locking people into their quarters, like 3 people at a time. Those quarters are tiny for 3 people. That was freaking me out.
Odo must be really enjoying this.
Oh, yeah, because he gets everything under control.
Yeah.
Julian goes to, I guess, the medical bay with a never-before-seen security guy behind him.
Yep.
Snodgrass is handing out phasers, which seems dangerous since any one of these people could be the changeling. Odo says he doesn't want a weapon because he never uses them, and he also says the line we've heard many times, which is no changeling has ever harmed another. He says he would hate to be the first. Odo says in all the time he's been a security officer, he's never found the need to fire a weapon or take a life, and he doesn't intend to start now.
Except for that time when the Founders kidnapped Kira. He was ready to kill to save Kira. And Scary Founder Woman, she knew that, and she was scared of him.
Except he didn't fire it.
He was ready to.
He was ready to.
And she saw that.
Maybe at that point he did find the need, but he didn't actually have to fire it because she backed down.
I think Odo is very much a needs justify kind of guy.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that was what she saw in Odo when they were in that situation. To save Kira, he would cross any line.
Yeah, I think she definitely saw that in him, and I think we saw that in him, and I believe that to be exactly true.
Good for Odo. Stand up for the ones you love.
Well, then Miles calls for a security team in the engine room, and Odo and Snodgrass run to him. And here we find Dax has been injured and is unconscious. Miles left her alone briefly. Julian says she has a severe concussion and we have to get her to the medical bay immediately. At this point, the changeling could be any of these people because we keep separating from our partners.
Exactly.
Including Dax, by the way.
Also, if this was a strategic move to take out the science officer, why didn't the changeling take out Miles as well? You disabled the 2 people who could realistically get control of the ship back.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. It would have made more sense here if Miles had turned out to be the changeling.
Oh, that would have been good.
I guess at this point he could have been.
Interesting theory.
Well, on the bridge, Julian says Dax is still unconscious and he's trying to stabilize her condition, but she's likely to be out for a few days, which, I don't know, this is very suspicious already.
Yes.
Sisko's frustrated because now Miles is going to have to try to regain control of the ship on his own. After Julian leaves, Sisko tells Kira that if they can't regain control of the ship by the time they cross the border, they'll have no choice but to destroy the Defiant. Another Star Trek trope.
So he's been captain for 26 minutes, and already he's talking about activating the self-destruct sequence.
100%.
This is almost as good as Marina Sirtis taking control of the Enterprise and immediately crashing it into a planet.
Well, Marina Sirtis never took control of the Enterprise, but Deanna Troi did. But yes, I thought the same thing. It's like you get power hungry. I'll just blow the ship up. Well, Sisko is now addressing the crew, which includes a bunch of people that we've not seen before. And he's saying that the objective is to find the changeling and stop him before he can do any more damage. Everyone is breaking into teams of 2, and no one is supposed to be alone. Again, the rifles have been reconfigured to fire an expanding energy pulse, which means it won't damage equipment, but should be strong enough to affect the changeling. Sisko says they're going to sweep the ship until they find him.
So the plan is shoot everything.
It seems like it. The blue guy in the security uniform says, but what if he's actually one of us? And Sisko says, that's why you will be in teams, and you should keep your partner in sight at all times. And anyone found unescorted should be taken to the brig.
Okay, I'm going to point out that's the guy you do not want to give the gun to.
Why?
He's going to be the one shooting people going, I think it's him. I think it's her. I think it's him.
Yeah, he seems very panicked.
Yeah.
There's always one.
He's the panicky guy.
He's Lambert in Alien. Oh. That's the way I was looking at him.
The one who gets, freaked out.
Yes, having a panic. So now we show Kira and her blue man partner firing their phasers into a conduit. The blue guy's very paranoid, and he will not let Kira out of his sight. Then we see Odo and Snodgrass doing the same thing. Snodgrass is sweating because the modified phaser beam is heating up the air, making the conduits hotter than usual. He asks Odo if he sweats, and Odo's like, no. Snodgrass then asks Odo where he would go if he were the changeling, but Odo has no idea how to anticipate his next move. He says he doesn't understand his people all that well. Yeah, clearly.
This seemed like a valid question, but I guess if your people were genocidal racists, you might really be touchy on the subject of comparing yourself with them.
Yeah, I mean, I get that he would be touchy, but at the same time, these changelings keep putting us at risk.
Yeah.
And it's like, Odo, you're our one advantage. You got to figure out how to identify them. You got to figure out how they're going to react in these situations.
But in defense of Odo, he's so very different from his people. He couldn't even necessarily think like them.
Yeah. I guess that's true. He doesn't understand their motivations at all because their motivations come from being so small-minded.
Oh, precisely. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Sisko and his partner, another NPC, are crawling down a ladder. When they get to the bottom of the ladder, the changeling appears, grabbing the NPC by the throat and ramming his head against the wall and then disappearing again, knocking Sisko over. Sisko tells everybody that the changeling is in Jeffrey's 7A heading to the lower deck, so everyone starts converging on that location.
Looked like the gold shirt guy was actually a red shirt.
Yeah. Aw.
His 3 minutes in Star Trek ended up with a broken neck.
Yeah, he was gone really fast. So now Sisko, Kira, and the blue guy all land in one small room pointing phasers at each other. The blue guy thinks Kira is the changeling, but really it could be any one of them because they were all by themselves. Odo pops in behind the blue guy, disarms him, and knocks him out.
Yeah.
But now we have Snodgrass and Odo arrive independently, so they also could be the bad guy.
This was kind of funny. It was a classic standoff. They're all there pointing guns at each other, and you've got the panicky blue guy who you shouldn't have given a weapon to.
No. Well, Sisko says we have a problem because any one of us now could be the changeling. And Odo says, well, no, not you, to Sisko, because he's bleeding. He says he doesn't bleed. When any part of his body is separated from himself, it turns back into a gelatinous state. So everyone goes to the mess hall and they call Julian.
You know, you could have brought this up earlier, Odo. And on top of that, didn't any of these people watch The Thing?
Well, I didn't, so I don't know what that means.
Go and watch The Thing by John Carpenter.
Okay. Well, it does seem like an almost obvious thing at this point.
Yeah.
Right? If he can't sweat, can't bleed, I mean, we've got some clues now that we could use to identify the changelings. Although we also don't really know if the changelings can do some things that Odo can't do. I'm pretty sure about the gelatinous part, but, they might be able to fake sweating.
Okay, well, I actually have a theory how changelings could get around that.
Okay.
First option, if a changeling's a really good shapeshifter, it could change some of its genetic material, some of its makeup, into actual blood. And when it left the changeling, it would be blood. The second theory is, and this might be easier for a changeling, the changeling could absorb some blood from an actual human and just keep it somewhere in its gelatinous state. Make a little pocket for storing it.
Spit it out.
Yes. And then when it wanted to simulate bleeding, it could create a fake cut or something and leak the blood through. That's my theory.
That's scary.
Yeah.
These guys are scary.
And they're smart as well.
Yes. And they do not like us. Well, now Julian starts dramatically and slowly drawing blood from everyone. The blue guy has blue blood, which apparently is expected.
Yep.
Kira is also clean. Then when he goes to check Snodgrass, he kind of hides the tube in his hand, and then when he holds it up, it's not blood, but goo. And everyone points their phaser at Snodgrass.
This is totally the scene from The Thing.
Oh, funny.
As an homage to the original movie, they should have actually tied everybody up with rope doing that scene. That would have been awesome. They missed an opportunity there.
Well, there's also an X-Files element, I would say, to this scene.
Ooh, that's another good one.
Yeah, and that's, of course, in the same time period, or at least relatively close to the same time period. So it was the kind of show we were watching on TV at the time. Well, I think at this point, we all know it's not really Snodgrass, because he would have done the same thing that the changeling has been doing every single other time he's gotten caught, right? Where he'd change fast and escape. Well, so they're walking him to the brig when there's a little explosion and one of the doors opens, revealing Julian behind a force field shouting, "Get me out of here." And everyone somehow, they look shocked and they don't do anything. They don't move. And the other Julian turns into the changeling again and flies up into the wall. But this time Odo follows.
Somebody did shoot this time.
Well, after he was gone.
Yes.
But I was just like, oh my God, people, come on. And the guy disappeared again. And then the bridge calls to say that they've entered Zenkethi space.
I will question, after they found Snodgrass, why they didn't continue to test and try Bashir, because what if there were two changelings?
Yeah, keep testing everybody.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
There could have been a second changeling. Send two people on a mission.
You gotta be super paranoid. There could be 47 of them.
That's a really good point. The rest of the crew.
Yes. Well, we head to the bridge, and we're 12 minutes from being in weapons range of the closest Zenkethi settlement. So Sisko initiates auto-destruct, with Kira adding her authorization. They've got 10 minutes to gain control of the ship. Sisko calls Miles, who thinks he can shut down the force fields, but it means shutting all the force fields down. Julian comes in, and by the way, he is now by himself again. But he says Dax is still unconscious because of the sedatives the Changeling gave her. All they can do now is wait for Miles.
I did like the interaction between Miles and Sisko here. When Sisko asks him how long it's going to take, right as the computer says, auto-destruct in 7 minutes. And Miles replies with, oh, I guess it better be less than 7 minutes then.
Yeah, yeah, very Miles.
And Sisko says, that would be my suggestion.
That would be my preference at this point. Yeah.
I saw that as like a gallows humor in the face of potential tragedy.
Well, now we go down to the engine room and Miles is working with an NPC. He says, when we do this, we might lose the protective field around the warp core, which means this room will heat up fast.
So when you started this scene and saw the NPC, did you figure that was going to be another red shirt?
No, I guess I didn't think about that. But in this episode, there's a lot of red shirts who aren't wearing red shirts.
When that guy was working with Mars, I was like, oh, he's a red shirt.
It's like that movie, was it Sphere, where if your face wasn't on the poster, you're dead at the end?
Oh, yes.
It was a little bit like that in this episode.
Yeah.
If your name didn't appear during the theme song, you might not last.
Right.
Well, then an Odo oozes onto each side of the room, and they try to convince Miles that they're Odo. Miles doesn't care. He tells the NPC to just keep the phaser on both of them as the two Odos stare at each other.
I feel they missed an opportunity here that the real Odo, at this point, would start talking to the other changeling, asking him why he was doing this, what his motivation was. You know the way Odo likes to gain understanding of things.
Yes, but I think he's aware of the situation, and I'm sure he can hear the auto-destruct coming from the computer. So maybe the sense of urgency got him a little bit here. But I think naturally, yes, that would have been his inclination to start asking questions. Well, with 4 minutes left, Miles drops all the force fields and the evil Odo starts knocking everyone out and gets into a battle with the real Odo. He seems to kind of disable Odo by merging with him, and I can't tell if it's painful or not, but I mean, it must not be because we have the whole thing about the Odos not harming each other.
Yeah, he like pushes his hand into his chest and starts merging, turning it to liquid.
Yeah, and it looks painful. The changeling doesn't understand why Odo is protecting the solids, and he says, it's too late for you to help them. Just link with me and we can escape together. Although, where's he going? I don't know.
You don't belong with them, you belong with us. More of that narrow-minded viewpoint of the changelings. There's us, and there's nobody else.
Right. Well, Odo says he doesn't want to, and he fights back, knocking the changeling into the warp core.
This is quite significant, because that changeling, as we've seen, is a very experienced, very effective changeling who has a technique of disabling Odo with doing this partial merge thing. Yet Odo manages to fight back and not only regain control, but if you notice, he starts making the other changeling turn gelatinous when he throws him off. So I think that really points to the fact that Odo is very strong.
I'm guessing, too, that he's learning how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, based on what's being done to him. He's a pretty quick study, so maybe he's just picked up the trick right away and is just doing it back to the guy.
When he was doing that merge with Odo, do you think that Odo could actually learn things from him? That Odo, they could be some kind of, you know, transmission of information or learning or knowledge or something unintentionally?
Well, I wondered that way back in the search when he was first doing whatever this merging is with the woman who seems to be in charge of everything.
Scary Founder Woman.
Yeah, I wondered that too. But it seemed like it took the Great Link for them to really link.
Yeah.
I don't know. Otherwise, why would they do the link at all? You know, why was she doing it with him? Just kind of out in the open. So there must be something to it. They must be transferring knowledge or something.
Maybe there's a subconscious transfer.
Maybe, but I was going to say maybe because this changeling and probably all of the changelings, they just really don't understand why Odo wouldn't come with them. Yeah. So they don't stop themselves from transferring this knowledge to Odo. They don't do anything to prevent it.
Yeah, why would you hide any secrets or keep anything from Odo? Yeah, he's one of us.
Exactly. He's one of us. Yeah. We just need to convince him.
That's a great take. Yeah. Well, I thought it was impressive that Odo was able to actually fight back.
Right. Well, Odo grabs Miles and tells him to regain control of the ship as the other changeling starts to burn up. Odo tells him he never meant to harm him, and he starts dying. But first he whispers something to Odo, which we don't hear. And then he seems to kind of burn up and turn to dust.
Yes, he first started being very melty, and now he just looks like he's turned to carbon.
Odo was not happy about this.
Not his fault.
Well, Miles restores control of the ship to the helm, and Sisko redirects their route and cancels the auto-destruct, and everyone is relieved.
If you notice as well, in that final part of that scene, you see the intern working in the background, so it looks like he wasn't a red shirt after all.
Someone survived, although, honestly, there could still be more changelings on board, so we should still do blood tests of everybody.
As I pointed out earlier.
Back at the station now, they're having a debriefing, and the real ambassador is still missing. It turns out the whole thing with the Zenkethi coup was a ruse, and none of it happened. Odo enters, and he says he needs to tell Sisko something. He says that before dying, the changeling whispered, "You're too late. We're everywhere." Ah! Oh my goodness, dramatic music, the end, and the end of the season. What a cliffhanger.
That is a great cliffhanger ending.
I mean, how did we not already think they were everywhere? I've been thinking they're everywhere. They're popping up everywhere we go all the time.
I think maybe the Federation is just doing that too trusting thing.
Oh my gosh. I guess so. Well, it's the end of the episode, the end of the season. So what do you have for overanalysis?
Well, for overanalysis. So let's start off with, so the ambassador was a changeling and gave Sisko this mission.
Yeah.
Aren't ambassadors separate from Starfleet? So shouldn't have Sisko confirmed this mission with Starfleet, seeing as ambassadors don't run starships?
100%.
And then, secondly, what about Suck Up Eddington? He calls the Admiral every chance he gets to tattletale on Sisko.
Totally.
So why wasn't he calling him and going, are we sure about this?
Well, I was thinking about that with that "we're everywhere" comment.
Yeah.
Maybe they did call.
Ooh.
And the answer they got was, "Oh yeah, sure.
Right.
I'm that person who immediately jumps to 1,000 conclusions, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, there's one. Okay, there's a million. That's me.
Sometimes it's the safest approach.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that answer.
Okay.
Next thing. So when do you think that Changeling replaced Bashir?
I assume it happened when he went into the medical bay and they showed that NPC security guy.
Yeah.
I assume he came up behind the security guy, killed him, and then took over Bashir. Or he was the security guy.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's probably the easier story because then he'd already hidden that body or whatever he'd done.
So you think it was before Dax was knocked out?
Yes.
Yeah, I was making the assumption that before Dax was knocked out, that was when he was replaced. So he could give Sisko the excuse that, oh, Dax is going to be down for a few days, she can't help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're in the same place there.
Which is why Bashir didn't do any of the things he was supposed to do, because he was sent down there to find ways to identify the changeling or find the changeling. Right. But he didn't do that. He went down there, was turned into the changeling, and then went and knocked out Dax.
Yeah, and he'd already had practice at being Bashir.
Right.
Next thing.
Okay.
So you're in that situation.
Yeah.
You're heading towards Zenkethi space and risk starting a war. Couldn't you just dump the warp core, seeing as they have control in engineering?
That seems like a good idea. Because why do they have access to turn on the auto-destruct?
Yes.
And not access to dump the warp core?
Right.
Yeah, there are always some kind of flaws like that in the logic. But that's okay. I'm okay with it. But yeah, I would think you could have dumped the warp core.
I'll take the drama over the logical conclusions.
Yeah, me too. It's half the fun.
Next one is, so has Odo, in your opinion, broken the rule of harming another changeling?
Sure.
I agree.
I mean, he didn't do it on purpose, but he still caused his death.
Yeah, and he fought with another changeling and accidentally caused his death, but he was still having that fight in the first place.
I mean, look, in a court of law, he's innocent, but this is not a court of law.
Well, the changelings have their own law.
Yeah. No, I think he's going to be looked at as having harmed the changeling. And they maybe at this point are going to stop being so nice to him and trying to convince him to come over to the other side. And the scary woman did indicate that early in the season. Yeah. That she wasn't going to be this nice forever.
It also makes me wonder of, would they even want Odo in? Because he clearly is different.
Yep.
That could
He might actually ruin the link.
Right. He could actually make them decent people.
Yeah, well, of course, they're not going to look at it that way. They might just look at it as he's going to infect all of them in some way.
With this love of the solids.
Which clearly just means he's broken.
Great point.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff to unpack there, I think.
Well, yeah, it just opens up so many things because Odo gets a lot of protection right now. You know, they don't try to harm him. Also, the Jem'Hadar don't try to harm him. But now he might just be looked at as a threat.
Ooh. So it allows them to rewrite their rules at the same time.
Right. Which is very scary for him.
Yeah. No changeling has harmed another, except in circumstances where we need to defend ourselves.
Yeah. Except that one time. That'll be their new saying.
Right.
Because they say it all the time. They're just going to have to add to the end. Well, except that one time when Odo did.
And we've already seen they justify everything by, oh, it's for our defense.
True. From the solids.
Yes.
The solids are so mean.
So we'll be genocidal maniacs.
Yep.
Yeah, so I agree. He has broken the rule. So next thing.
Okay.
Do you think they can get a hold of that Cardassian anti-changeling device?
Well, they need it. They need it or something like it. I mean, they should have started working on that as soon as they got back to the station.
Right. Soon as they had the reports, they should be working on that.
Yeah.
Maybe even ask the Cardassians.
Although it seemed like it came from the Order, which means they're not going to share it. But still, if they know that there's a way to do it, they could start working on it.
If one person's done it, then somebody else potentially could.
And you've got a test subject right there. Although I'm sure he doesn't want to be the guinea pig.
That would be kind of mean to Odo.
But at the very least, you know, it was used on him. And so at least he could offer some information, even if you don't want to try to test it on him.
I could see the concern from Odo's standpoint there of you just had two secret clandestine organizations try to literally wipe out your people. So there'd be something of a resistance to helping anyone have a device that could hurt his people. Because we've seen that certain individuals' first response is, let's go and kill all of them.
Do you remember in Playing God when there was that mini universe or whatever it was?
Oh, yes.
And Kira was like, let's just blow it up because it's going to kill us all.
Oh, yeah. The one that they just went through the wormhole and they just threw it out the window.
And threw it out the window. Exactly. I'm confident that Kira and I would be on the same page with this, which is, hey, we got to find a way to protect ourselves. Doesn't matter if, you know, it could cause potential harm to them. Yeah. Because they're so dangerous and they're infiltrating now into our worlds and into our lives. And this is crazy. So you got to find a way to protect yourself.
I guess you could argue that the whole attack on the Founders, led by Tain, was enabled by the Founders. They did everything they could, quote, to enable this to happen.
Oh, well, gosh, good point. They wanted it to happen.
Yeah. So if it hadn't been for them, Tain might have been the crazy old guy shouting at the television screen.
Shouting, get off my lawn.
Yeah, exactly.
In his grandpa sweater.
Right.
That is a very good point. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. And it's fulfilled in their favor.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good one.
And my final point is, this might be a long one. Ranking within Starfleet. I kind of see the future here of a post-rank society. Shouldn't everyone be aiming for leadership? They're still having very rigid hierarchy roles of captain, officers, enlisted men. Whereas you see somebody like Miles, who is enormously competent at what he can do and is a good engineer, and yet you see him as lesser because he's not an officer. Why would you have to have ranks within a society and in an organization like Starfleet where the striving is to be the best of yourself? I feel that is sort of a miss. And I'm thinking in a bigger picture.
But if we look at Miles and how much he is appreciated for being the best at what he is, it doesn't mean that he has to, manage people, but he's still a leader.
Yes, but he's an enlisted man, so even the lowest officer is still higher than Miles. Starfleet is prioritizing rank, which I question of why would that even be necessary?
Yeah. Oh, no, I get what you're saying.
Because this ties into Eddington, this hint of dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
Why can't he move on to be captain or go up in the ranks? Why do you have this very rigid, old naval style structure? Within something that's in the future? It seems to me to be a very classist approach to ranking and position, which would date back to like the classic British Navy of the Age of Sail type of thing.
Well, it's a very old school kind of way of looking at things. And we're trying to say that humans have evolved away from needing these sort of personal accomplishments or whatever.
Right.
You still need structure, you need order, you need somebody to be in command. You need to be able to know who to listen to in certain situations, or you need to be able to rely on somebody who has the final say in decision making. Otherwise, these ships are dangerous.
Oh, yes. That part I agree with, that you need a structure, But at the same time, this differentiation between the ranks and the officers and the enlisted, to me, seems somewhat strange in a future society. It still seems like you're perpetuating what would be a class structure. So in theory, you could have a really crappy officer above all the enlisted personnel.
Well, sure. I get you. No, I think it's a very good overanalysis point and something really to think about. I think some of it comes down to we're unable to define a utopian society really that would all think that way, because that two reasons. One, it's hard to imagine and relate to. But two, you need the drama of the story.
Very good point.
And I think Deep Space Nine was well known, even at the time when it originally aired, as being a little bit different in that they were introducing these conflicts and these types of failings in people that maybe Gene Roddenberry was trying to show, no, we're going to evolve away from all of that. But the point of this show was to be like, yeah, but we need the drama, okay? We need the character development and we need the conflict because that's just more interesting to watch.
Yes, and it does make it more relatable if you use something like a structure that we're all familiar with.
It does.
Like the military naval structure.
Well, and maybe this is even why I'm suddenly interested in the Snodgrass character. All of a sudden, he's got a layer.
Yes.
Whereas quite frequently, they'll drop in a security uniform.
Right.
And then that person just disappears into nothingness. But now, all of a sudden, there's a human in there, and it's more interesting.
Right.
I get your point. I didn't get it at first, but I think you kind of need it for the drama.
Yes.
But you could, in theory, write stories that were about all of the outside things instead of inside to the characters and inside to Starfleet. But it would be much harder to do on Deep Space Nine than on a show that was constantly traveling.
True. If you did it on a starship, you could probably make that work as a plot concept and a story concept.
Exactly, yeah.
I would almost see the ship being run with, look, there's a captain who's ultimately the final decision maker. But in terms of command structure, the structure is who is the person who does it best in this situation. We have an engineering problem that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Miles is basically in charge until we fix this problem.
And everybody looks to him.
Yes, or it's a science problem. And the science problem comes down to Dax is effectively in charge. It's not a rigid structure. It's a floating structure that adapts to the environment that they're in and what problem needs to be solved at that point.
Right.
It's not there's officers and there's enlisted. There's a captain and then there are Starfleet personnel. That's the ranking, as it were.
Yeah, I've never, even in real life, understood the enlisted versus officer thing. I don't get that, and I don't care what that means. But it is a little bit strange. I agree with you. Like, why does it matter?
Offline from the podcast, I can give you a 30-minute presentation about military rankings.
You. Wow. Maybe you could record it and, put it on YouTube, and I'll watch it. And one of those many times that I'm watching YouTube videos. Which is another lie because I hate YouTube videos. But I don't understand that. And so I see your point in that way, that part of the ranking doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Well, and I think leadership exists in every way, in every position, in every form. So to me, leadership is something you can show no matter who you are and where you are.
Yeah.
So that doesn't matter to me. But the enlisted versus officer thing, that's baloney. In 300 years in the future, doesn't fit.
Okay, I think we're on the same page there.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that wraps it up for me for what has been a very long overanalysis.
Yeah, that was long. The only thing that I had written down in overanalysis was, how are we not already thinking they're everywhere, right? And that Odo needs to figure out how to detect them. That's pretty much my only thing that I wrote down.
I'd wonder about that, if there was some way for Odo to sense them or
even if he just touches them, could he not see that he's unable to merge with them or link with them or whatever that thing is? There must be some way for him to, in his immediate surroundings, be able to tell if somebody is a changeling.
That's a good point, because that changeling just touched Odo and started merging with him.
Exactly. He should just go around and touch everyone.
Yeah.
He could just become the floor, like in Terminator 2.
Oh.
And as people walk by, he can just be testing them to see if they're changelings through their feet.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I could see Odo doing.
That might avoid the HR call if he's going around touching everybody and trying to link with them.
Well, fortunately, they don't have HR on
they don't care.
DS9.
No.
Otherwise, they'd be very busy.
Yeah. Well, especially in season 1. Well, let's go to women in the future. And I don't have any issues with women in the future here. Everybody was just doing their job and just part of the story. It was good. No sexual harassment to complain about.
I feel bad that Carrie didn't get to shoot anyone.
No, she just got to shoot into the conduit. Well, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. Great episode. Enjoyed it a lot, even if there was a lot of parallels with The Thing.
And X-Files.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, great ending to the season.
Yes.
I give it a thumbs up as well. A cliffhanger that didn't leave the episode on the edge of the cliff, but it still left a bigger story to tell. So I thought it was very effective.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Even though not a ton of stuff happened, it didn't matter. It was really dramatic. It was very Star Trek-y because they were going to blow up the ship.
Oh, yeah.
You know, as soon as they start doing auto-destruct, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm into the story. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I agree with your assessment, yes.
All right, well, that is it for season 3.
The end of another season.
We'll come back next week and we will do our season wrap-up where we will rank all the episodes, the best and the worst, at least in our opinions.
I'm still surprised you've managed to make it this far.
It's been a little bumpy here as I looked at some of the numbers, and we'll share them when we do the season wrap-up of my thumbs up versus thumbs down. Surprisingly, this season was not doing very well because there were some really great episodes here. And we ended on such a high note, but there were some real lows here. So I definitely have struggled. So the wrap up should be an interesting conversation.
Yes, I'm expecting great things from the wrap up.
So we will come back next week with a wrap up, and then we will take a week off, and then we will jump into season 4, which from what I can already see in the Hulu thumbnail means Worf in episode 1. So I'm very excited.
Yes.
All right. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. Or you can also leave us a 5-star review on iTunes like we just got a couple of days ago.
Thank you.
You can also check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for individual episodes there. And you can also listen to the other podcasts on our network, including the Lower Decks podcast, which is going on now, and Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard. We cover all the shows on our network.
All the good shows.
And the bad ones.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.